last but not least, I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. Bo Bai. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Dr. Bai is co-founder and chairman of MetaVerse Green Exchange, which is a Singapore-based exchange trading crypto and carbon credits utilizing blockchain technology. There was an earlier reference to that. Dr. Bai is also the founder and chairman of Asia Green Fund, and will talk to us about leveraging the metaverse to reach carbon neutrality. So, Dr. Bai, over to you, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you perfectly.
Okay, great. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
Absolutely. All you need to do is just click on the green share screen button and it should be enabled.
Okay, excellent. Okay, is this working now?
Yes, it says you are sharing screen. Okay, there you go. Perfect.
Wonderful. Oh, great. So thank you, Ian. Thank you, Peter, for the invitation. It's quite a pleasure to be able to be here today to participate Wall Street Green Summit. And it's actually quite fascinating to hear all the earlier panelists talk about the various themes in hydrogen, in water solution, in ocean investments, and so on and so forth. And I founded the Asia Green Fund about 6 years ago, and based in Beijing, Shanghai, and a little bit Chicago. And by now, it has grown to be the largest green impact firm in China, with around $2 billion assets under management. We invest in companies such as the one that the earlier panelists mentioned, startup companies in solid-state battery, biosynthesis process for specialty chemicals, circular materials, and and the waste management, and so on and so forth. It's been pretty fascinating to look forward to opportunities to partner with the panelists in the future. In addition to the VC transactions, we also do some large leverage buyout transactions. We led a transaction with our co-investors to spend $510 million to acquire DuPont Cleantech just end of last year. And then that's really just another effort trying to drive a sustainability movement in the traditional energy, mining, petrochemical, and fertilizer, and then all those businesses. But today I was really just trying to talk about my other business called the MetaVerse Green Exchange. And then my topic is about how to combine and then how to leverage the metaverse technologies to reach carbon neutrality. So I think whenever people talk about the metaverse, and the general impressions are something like this. You're working on AR and VR goggles, talking about the avatar of people in the digital realm, and you're looking some like virtual lands and then playing some games and so on and so forth. Well, it certainly touches upon a few, one of the two major things in our view that is happening right now and over probably the next decade. One is the metaverse. The second one is green movements. How can these two things be together? And then how can you leverage one in order to drive more sustainability efforts? So that's what we have been spending all the years over the past 3 years trying to build, trying to think about, and trying to develop a business to do so. Speaking of assets, and then we talk about the metaverse of people. And NFT is a very popular topic these days. And then people talk about NFT, all the apes, all the punks, and so on and so forth. But what we found is NFT technology is insufficient to represent an asset because they can only represent a dead asset. And real world assets are actually live. What do I mean by that? Assuming that we want to finance and then want to do something about a wind farm and solar project, every day, day in, day out, there are power generated, there are revenue generated, a cost incurred for those assets. They need to be represented and captured if you want to use blockchain technology to help them in the new age in the metaverse. NFT just cannot do that anymore. So we actually developed something very interesting technology we call NFDT for green projects, for carbon in this digital age. It's just one word difference, but it's tremendously different. What we're really trying to combine is the old digital twin technology, where all the IoT sensors, big data are used to represent the real world assets, wind, solar, or carbon project, green building, and so on and so forth. But combine that with the blockchain technology behind a non-fungible token NFT, make that a real avatar, a real digital representation of the real world asset. So when you do this mapping, you're really creating a non-fungible digital twin of the real world wind project that has the legal title, such a project, that has the sensor sending real-time information from time 1, time 2, month 1, month 2 of what's happening with the project. And then by doing this way, you're actually making yourself in the metaverse a bankable, a securitizable assets. So that's essentially what we're trying to do, develop this technology. And in order to do that, and then after that, the whole aspiration is trying to create a global connected network for carbon and green asset trading network that is empowered by these technologies to solve exactly the problem as what Ian and other people has been talking about. How can technology innovation coupled with the right business, right regulation make a huge impact to enable the cross-border carbon trading, to enable the financing for the green assets? So that's where we're trying to tackle. So MetaVerse Green Exchange, we're actually based in Singapore. We founded about 3 years ago. Have gone through quite a journey to get to where we're today. We're a licensed company. And after 3 years, we obtained our RMO license. As an exchange, we have also obtained various capital market service license for custodial services, security, collective investment scheme, as well as dealing with crypto assets on a needed basis. The integrity of our exchange platform is extremely important. That's why from the very beginning, we partnered with NASDAQ to build exchange. Everything is on the cloud and then really supported by the cloud as well as public blockchain. But really the hardcore NASDAQ trading engine in the middle. And then we also use standard of risk control engine and also the smart surveillance engine developed by NASDAQ. But on top of that, we're doing something totally different with our own digital asset management system with a carbon footprint. When you go to a NASDAQ to issue a shares, you will have audited reports about your financials. When you want to issue something on our exchange, you not only need to have audited reports on the financial side, we will require you to have an audited report on the carbon footprint side based on ISO standard, ISO 14064, ISO 14067, and so on and so forth. This is actually learned from my private equity business. Every year, from 2019, 2020, 2021, we engage firms such as Bureau Veritas or BSI to measure the carbon footprint and the carbon improvements of our private equity investments for every dollar. So we're essentially trying to set the exact same model on our ledger of the exchange. What does this do to you? This will allow not only the carbon disclosure for issuers. By doing so, you actually can achieve carbon disclosure by every investor. And this is the way to drive the demand for carbon, demand for green assets. Now, we're doing all this work are trying to solve a very fundamental problem, that is carbon trading problem, which I've been working on over the past 10 years. Most time actually spending on the Asia side, particularly China side, on their carbon market development. What is the problem? When we move from a Kyoto Protocol to Paris Agreement, a huge difference is now developing countries have also signed up for Paris Agreement. So the old CDM trading mechanism is not as convenient anymore because the developing country now also needs to satisfy their NDC or their carbon emission reduction target. Article 6 of Paris Agreement took 5 years to come to fruition. Exciting to see in November, this finally come to fruition. More details needs to be established so that we can do the correspondence adjustment cross-border. But because of the absence of Article 6, because of the vagueness, not only the standard of carbon credit, but also cross-border trading of carbon credit has created a tremendous confusion and arbitrage and lack of consistency in the market. If you are buying a carbon credit from a commercial company, let's say in Indonesia, by a Japanese company, without a nationally or internationally fully agreed carbon registry, you're not quite sure whether you really bought it. So those are some of the problems have been plaguing the whole carbon industry. That's why we filed a whole bunch of patents from a few years ago to develop what we call Carbon Neutrality Token. This combines the blockchain technology and the real world process. It is a proprietary methodology to separate the sovereign ownership matter from those financial and environmental benefit of voluntary carbon credits. We do it in that way, just so that particular design is for developing country that will allow the developing country to continue satisfy their NDC, but really helping the multinational companies from the developed world to leverage the blockchain technology and also leverage the rigorous process from the developing country in order to achieve their own voluntary carbon neutrality efforts. And then we're trying to work on this with all sorts of standard that is accepted. One thing that we are very critical, we hold a very strong opinion on is that a carbon registry is a critical element of the whole system. And everybody probably appreciate that as well. And we hold the belief that the international meta registry will take a time to come into fruition. But the most important is every country will or are already in the process of establishing their own carbon registry. That registry itself is the most critical item. By now, we have connected with China. We're based in Singapore. We're already connected with them, which is the largest carbon market. So China used the China's national carbon credit standard, following the same CDM mechanism, but the highest quality type 1 type of carbon credit projects, and then linked to the China's national registry, and then connected to our exchange based in Singapore. We're working with a few other countries, and then some of them may be following Vera standard, some of them may be following Gold standard. But then nevertheless, we are trying to work with various highest international standard certified by firms such as DNV and Bureau Veritas and Vera in those countries, but follow the registry, and in the whole process, use our NFDT technology to protect the information, to capture the live information, and then has to create ongoing carbon token, which is essentially a digital format of a carbon voluntary credit. And this process is established to safeguard the highest level of integrity. It comes from the certification process of carbon standards, also the national registry to avoid any double usage and double counting, and then for NDC issues as well. We, as much as possible, follow ISO standard or PAS 2060 standard for NDT. But also, we have developed a tremendous amount of blockchain-based technology to leverage all the stuff for all those crypto assets to serve carbon. That's how the patent pending NFDT and it's about. When we do all those, we're essentially trying to create the digital carbon credit for people who want to achieve their portfolio carbon neutrality, or they want to achieve carbon neutrality for their real world assets or operation or even products. So that is how many of this carbon are essentially become a conduit for international capital to funnel through carbon to get into the developing world to support their green projects. We have done this for China, and that's from last September, connected with the China system. And we're just announced recently expanding into another couple provincial carbon exchange system from China to be able to connect it with the highest quality standard. The example here is essentially one of the highest quality wind project, and then registered as a China certified emission reduction through the China's carbon exchanges, through China National Carbon Registry, and transfer over to Singapore for us to make it a digital carbon credit for international trading, as well as for international carbon neutrality. We worked with BSI, British Standard Institution, and then to make this carbon neutrality token available, and then being able to achieve carbon neutrality by some of our customers' pursuit of a PAS 2060 carbon neutrality standard. In addition to carbon, another thing that we're very focused on is really create this digital asset-backed security market. And this is essentially a way to do the infrastructure. The infrastructure can be all sorts of green projects from the real economy, being the green industrials, materials, sustainable agriculture, wind, solar, solid state battery, electric vehicle battery as a service. And then all this can essentially be the assets used for backed security. So we are developing a carbon market as well as a digital ABS market as a full service platform with the primary insurance, with the secondary trading, with the settlement, custody, service, and so on and so forth. Because we believe if we can combine the latest MetaVerse technology, including our proprietary non-fungible digital twin technology, NFDT technology, and then how we combine NFDT with the real-world carbon credit registry certification process to create a digital carbon credit, carbon neutrality token. And this is the way that we can combine all these efforts to drive the sustainable development and in our race toward net zero. So it's again very fascinating to be able to join today's Wall Street Green Summit. And thank you, Peter and Ian, for the invitation. And certainly I look forward to not only exploring some co-investment opportunities from our Asia Green Fund, but also for anybody interested in digital carbon, in digital asset-backed security for green infrastructure. We'll be very happy to explore collaboration.
Thank you very much for that. And in fact, your last comments are right in line with the comments we've received from the audience, where we are asked, are you working with Canada at all? And would you partner with project developers and allow them to use your tokenization? And I think in the chat as well, I saw, yes, do you have plans to expand the tool to Europe? So you're obviously hitting on a subject of interest on both sides of the Atlantic.
Thank you very much. That's a fascinating question. So there are a few criteria for us to find the jurisdictions to work. And then Canada and the European Unions are certainly the areas that we did not have chance to touch upon too much yet, but we very much look forward to work with, given that historically over the past few years, we have been focusing on Asia. So one thing we need, number one, there needs to be a national registry for carbon, because without a national carbon registry, and it's going to be a mess. There will be double usages, there will be double counting. It's going to be it's particularly for emerging country. It is very easy to fall into a problem. So national registry with the national credit behind is critical prerequisite for us to work with that jurisdiction. There are a few countries have it, and then now we are seeing that many countries in Southeast Asia, in Middle East, I'm actually in Middle East right now, are actually establishing their carbon registry. So that's one. Two, they need to choose the carbon credit standard. And then frankly, it's our view, the country needs to choose that carbon credit standard, not to be imposed onto it. And then that standard probably follow Vera, follow Gold standard, follow whatever standard that the country's nationality decides to choose. And then it's our job to take that or not. Number three, it needs to be certified in our view by international certification firm for those credits. So we have all those three pieces together, and then we are essentially able to work on that. We're working with some, forestry project and the reforestry project in Asia, and we are looking to work with Middle Eastern country where I'm in right now, and we very much look forward to the chance to collaborate with Canada, with the European Union. That's really the most exciting area. So.
Oh, thank you. That's great. So I hope, hopefully for both of those people who left those comments, you now have your answers about the criteria for partnering. We have another question here in the final minutes. How will you communicate with stockholders? Will you use any UIX technology like crowdsourcing to market and empower the ideas of the stockholders? Some investors might want to help reduce carbon in countries with higher carbon emissions. So communicating with stockholders, how is that going to work?
Well, look, that's why I think a meeting like a summit like this is very important, just so that we can get our words out and then be able to communicate with the stockholders. That's one. Number two is, part of the beauty of in building this whole thing in this digital age, it's really available there. And then it's really immutable and then traceable. Everything is just so, the power of the metaverse technology, we're just scratching the surface. And then in the future, many things will be much more credible, much easier, and with the whole process. So, creating this what we call a digital twin or non-fungible digital twin of assets, and then make it available, and then for people to be able to see, to follow, to trace. And we also let people know that nobody, no country, nobody can change those information once they get into the distributed ledger. So that creates, I would say, we want to create integrity to those assets, including carbon, and then to make it appealing to stakeholders for them to better make their decision to invest, to fund, to drive sustainability with the commercial efforts.
Okay, thank you. We only have 1 minute left. I see that Peter has joined us again, but I'm going to give way to that last question, which was, with your digital ABS market, are you segregating just the carbon value of a project, or are you looking at the entire economic value of a project?
Very good question. If the project is a carbon negative, meaning that if it's a dirty asset, and we will capture the carbon footprint of every digital ABS on our platform. So if the project is carbon positive, for example, green project, we give the investor, the issuer, the option. You can do it by capturing both the economic and the carbon value in the unit you issue, or you can segregate them. We encourage people to segregate because they are tailoring to different investors, but it's up to the issuers to decide.
Okay, great. And we are right on time. So thank you very much for that presentation. Very interesting.